Hi, Mr. Norton. We've got another video in our series on the Reformation. In our first video, we focused on early Christian humanism, and now we're going to focus more on Luther and what his impact was on the Reformation movement. Now, we're not going to cover all of Luther and the Reformation. We're going to start basically with what got him started, and we're also going to go all the way until around the time that he's excommunicated from the church, and we have our issue with him basically hiding from the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to go ahead and focus on basically what is it that drives Luther at first. So his early days in the church, he's kind of consumed with this question, which kind of is like a question for all of Christianity. Basically, what do you have to do to be saved? So what is it that one has to do in order to gain entrance to the kingdom of heaven? That's going to be driving him in terms of what he's searching for in terms of answers, and pretty much ends up pushing this whole Reformation movement. So let's go ahead and do some background on what's going on at the time, some contextualization, if you will. Okay, let's talk about some problems that are going on with religion. If you've been paying attention to the video series or class that you've been taking, you should know that there are many different issues with religion at this time. Some of them basically containing the fact that, well, the church isn't exactly interested primarily in, well, being the spiritual leaders. They have economic interests, they have political interests, they're power hungry, and, well, there's other issues too that we've talked about before. Things like the fact that members of the church were more interested in trying to take as many positions as possible so that they could get more money, and basically they just didn't have any interest in, well, fulfilling the needs of the people and meeting their spiritual needs. So there's an effect that we have on the people of Europe in the fact that, well, they start looking for their own ways, their own path to get into heaven, and it can get, well, quite different from what you might think happens as far as religion that you're familiar with today. People begin looking for things called relics, and relics are essentially these religious items. It could be something like someone's skull, like someone that was in the Bible. It could be something that belonged to them. But basically, it's this artifact that is attached to a very important person in the Christian religion. And the whole purpose for people collecting these is because they thought that that would get them out of purgatory. Not completely eliminate it, but that it would reduce their time. So if you're not familiar with what purgatory is this place in which when you die, you go there, and it's kind of like your waiting place as far as you getting into heaven. Like after so many years or so much time has passed by, you would eventually get there. So they thought that by the more you collect, the more that you would have it reduced. The person is very important in the fact that Luther is able to survive when he's condemned as an outlaw. The Elector of Saxony had so many relics, he thought that he had basically shaved off 2 million years off of his time in purgatory. Now, nobody knows or had any idea of how long you would spend in there. And honestly, they don't really have any way of knowing how long, if purgatory even exists, that these relics would go ahead and shave them off. But that was kind of the belief on where they're going. Speaking of early Luther, okay, so he has some problems with what's basically accepted as common religious practices because they conflict with what he believes religion should be. He has some big-time issues with things like confession. If you don't know what confession is, because not all Christian faiths have it, and maybe you're not a Christian either, I don't know, okay, is this idea that when you sin, you go and you talk to a priest or a church leader, and basically they take you through a ritual in which your sins are forgiven. As he reads the Bible, because he's literate, and I swear I can't have a video without my daughter screaming in it, so I'm going to pause right there. Alright, so we're back after checking on whether there's soap in my daughter's hair for her shower. So anyways, basically what happens is Luther is, I gotta get my train of thought back here. Luther has this idea like only God can forgive sin, so why do I need to go through a priest and go through this whole practice of being forgiven through confession? So that doesn't make much sense. Some other things too is that there's some confliction as well, is the Catholic Church is pushing this message about how you can actually gain entrance into heaven through good deeds. And the way that Luther sees it in his reading of the Bible is that the only way that you can get into heaven is basically through the grace of God. You have to believe in Jesus Christ, you have to have faith in his promises, and through faith alone are you able to get into heaven. Other things that conflicts too, remember the Catholic Church is big on actual people leadership. Luther doesn't believe in that. Luther believes that the Bible should be the sole authority of Christianity. So there's some other things going on. If we remember Pope Leo X, he's the one who basically was an example of nepotism in our previous lecture with Christian humanism. And Pope Leo at this time had basically destroyed the former St. Peter's Basilica, which was created by Emperor Constantine of the former Roman Empire. And he plans on creating a new one, and he's going to raise the money for it through this jubilee, this celebration, and it's called the Indulgence Jubilee. Okay, and so if you don't know what an indulgence is, it was basically the Pope was sending around a guy, Johann Tetzel. Basically, Tetzel's going to be his pimp for this. Okay. So he's going around selling these pieces of paper that basically get you out of purgatory and into, it's a get out of purgatory free card. And there's a quote in your book that, depending on which book you have, obviously, that says like when the coin in the coffer rings, the soul for salvation will spring, something along those lines. So they're basically going around and just like, hey, give me money and I'll get your relative out of purgatory, or you buy this piece of paper now and God will remember that because it's with us, it's with us in the church, and we'll just keep it, and when you die you'll just go straight to heaven. It's like it's like kind of, if it sounds hokey, I mean, you can kind of understand where Luther's coming from with this one. Luther's argument though is that the people who are spending their money on these indulgences are basically ensuring themselves of damnation and going to hell because they're relying on spending money, I don't even know if you can call it good deeds. I guess it would be good deeds because you're paying for something good to happen. But he is really at odds with this, and it really strikes home with him to where he really wants to take some action. And so what he does is he creates the 95 Theses. And basically it's this laundry list of all the issues he has with not only the indulgences but the Catholic Church itself. Now, he ends up nailing it to the Catholic Church, nailing it to the church door. Very famous as far as that's concerned. Lots of pictures and references throughout history of this particular event. His message begins to gain popularity because he's doing so in an area of Germany that has actually become very dissatisfied with the Catholic Church. Luther also knows he has to be careful because he's aware of what happened with John Hus. And if you don't remember John Hus, see the video I did before this one on Christian humanism, okay? He knows that he's playing with his life right here. Of course, every time we do this, I always love doing the little Martin Luther themes, or memes, I should say. I could not find the one, though, because we always cover this right around Halloween, where it says I wanted 95 Theses, not 95 Reese's. Whatever, hit that corny drum roll, okay? All right, so Quickening Rebellion. So basically we're talking about this. This is a little section in our textbook. Okay, so there's a Leipzig debate. I could have totally butchered that. I do butcher names from time to time. And it's a guy named Eck versus Luther. And so Eck is able to basically push Luther in going further than he had before. Remember, originally Luther is only condemning things like the indulgences. But now Luther is going ahead and pushing beyond that threshold and saying that he's also condemning the power of the Pope and other church officials and organizations, saying that they don't really have power either. And of course he's going to say that because, as we mentioned earlier, the Bible is supposed to be the supreme authority. Also, something that's very dangerous for Luther is that Eck is able to basically try and paint him in a corner and associate him with John Hus. So again, it's becoming very dangerous for him to continue in this particular, frame of thought. After that point, Luther ends up writing 3 writings. Okay, these are going to be the Address to the Nobility of the German Nation, and you'll kind of see how he's playing with his own life here, because he is trying to encourage the nobility of Germany to overthrow the Catholic Church and basically create a new one. Obviously, that's not going to go over very well with the Catholic Church. Also, he compounds that with his next one, the Babylonian captivity of the church, where he basically says the Pope and the church have been keeping the message of the church, the true meaning of the church and religion, hostage for thousands of years. Okay, clearly if you're the Pope, not going to go over very well. Then on freedom of the Christian man, this is the one, if of the three, this is the one that doesn't necessarily do a whole lot of harm, in my opinion, but it does still go against the church's message, the Catholic Church. So basically he's trying to reinforce that whole thing of good deeds don't get you into heaven. His argument is because you are trying to be Christ-like, that would be your motivation to actually do good deeds. So what are the effects of Luther's writing? Basically, he's kicked out of the church. That's what excommunicated means. He's also called before the Reichstag, which is a legislative body, and we have the Diet of Worms. I know it's spelled worms in your textbook. And that's done because of Emperor Charles V, who's the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, the whole purpose of this is to basically bring Luther in front of everybody and have him recant, take back the things that he had said that were negative about the church, and basically take things back about the indulgences. And he has to be careful because he knows if he does not, he's basically playing with his life. He kind of takes a Thomas More route and says, all right, you know what? I firmly believe this. You can't make me take them back. I'm not going to. So what's the fallout of him basically refusing to recant? Well, that's the Edict of Worms, and he's made an outlaw. And Charles V wants him to go ahead and be brought before him to basically face some punishment. Now, Luther is very fortunate that the elector, the Prince of Saxony, so he lives in a German province, a German state called Saxony. Remember, the Holy Roman Empire is made up of all these hundreds of little states that all have their own ruler. Well, the one that is ruled in Saxony is a big fan of Luther, and basically he hides him and protects him for a few years. And so what is able to happen while Luther is in hiding is that Luther is able to convert the Bible, which he can obviously read, into German. And that's a big deal as far as Luther's message. Luther is always going to want people to basically be their own priest, their own spiritual leader, to interpret the Bible for themselves. And so by being able to do this, by being able to convert the Bible into German, he's allowing his people to actually go ahead and move forward with that step. And that's going to be about where we wrap it up here. I'm going to basically take off after this point. In our next lecture video is going to be talking about the challenges that Luther faces as far as within his own followers. He ends up having a problem as far as the Peasants' Revolt, and he has some issues where he becomes a little bit more reliant on the nobility to basically shape and get his church going than he had hoped. And we end up actually seeing that his church doesn't look exactly how he wanted to. But we're going to save that for next time. Hope you learned something in this little short video, and we'll see you in the next one.